Greetings. Welcome to another episode of All Men Are Not Created Equal podcast. I'm Brother Esquire, and we want to first thank Almighty God for giving us an opportunity to come to you today, to the listening audience, to the viewing audience. We have a dynamic show, and hold on tight. It is going to be power packed with a whole lot of information, and this show is extremely timely when we're talking about COVID-19 and education. There's tons of information that, as parents, we need to hear. As educators, we need to know, and as legislators, we should be informed about. Today's episode is entitled "Survival of the Fittest." Thriving in our new school normal and what it means to thrive in this new school normal with children who are on the spectrum, children who are not on the spectrum. And we have a guest here who runs her own consulting firm assisting parents during this pandemic. And I got to tell you, in New York City, we're at a crisis. We have a governor and a mayor who have some acrimony amongst themselves and find it very difficult to agree on what path we need to take when it comes to educating our children. And our children are the ones who are actually getting caught up in this fight because schools are opening, schools are closing. We're going to allocate resources towards technology. We're not going to allocate resources technology. And at this point, the children really don't know what to do. Some don't know if they're going to have blended learning. They're not going to have blended learning. And when you have leadership that can't agree on how to best service our children, you're talking about a serious crisis here in New York City. And I could assume that this is probably happening all around the country. And in New York, apparently there's an uptick and some of the COVID cases. And now we have administrators scrambling. We have teachers and students, parents who are working, trying to figure out what they're going to do if New York goes totally remote. So this afternoon, however, we do have some help. We have help from a young woman who has decided to lend her talents and lend her resources to helping the community in ways that is definitely needed. At this time, I'd like to bring to our program our special guest, Ms. Danielle N. Williams. Welcome to the show, Ms. Williams. How are you?
Thank you. How are you doing? I'm doing well. Good to see you.
I'm doing well as well. Well, thank you for joining us. And I want to thank you for your time because
Sure.
what we're discussing today, we can't even put a value on it. It's about the education of our children.
Right.
And I know you specialize in not only the education, but special education.
Yeah.
And what it means to our Black and brown children in our communities and our communities at large, because we know that disabilities don't discriminate. It hits every family. And I know as parents, when when our children are first born, the first thing we do, we count the toes, we count the fingers, and we say a prayer, but we know that's just the beginning of the journey. And oftentimes later on, we're faced with challenges, and some of these challenges are challenges that, as parents, we're not equipped to handle, and many of us may not have the patience to handle. When we learn that our child may have a learning disability or may have a disability that affects their learning, and oftentimes there's a stigma that's attached, and we may not want to address that stigma. And I know your background and your expertise. Hopefully today you're going to assist us in handling the stigma that's attached and handling some of the challenges that come with having a child who may have some special needs. So can you give us a bit about your background and what has brought you to this point?
Sure. So thank you for having me. So happy to be here. I want everybody who's listening to get ready. I'm very straightforward. I do not sugarcoat things because we cannot during this time. So, one of the things about stigma is that I do education. A lot of people know that I'm an expert in special education, but I just do education. What are we doing for our children? So, how did I get here? Originally, I wanted to be an attorney, like Brother Esquire, and I was working in law firms and working in training. I decided to teach an adjunct professor as an adjunct professor at Virginia State University, one of our HBCUs. And what happened was I was looking at the reading and the writing skills of my students. And I said, what's going on? Easily, as an intro to poli-sci major and as a professor of introduction to political science, I said I wanted my students to write papers every week, 2 to 3 pages in the format. And what happened was I was looking at the papers that were submitting and saying, what is going on? What is the language that they're speaking? And I just felt that they weren't college ready. So my wonderful cousin, Danielle, said, Danielle, why don't you do the Teaching Fellows program in New York City? And of course, I said, I'm not coming back to New York. And I'm never coming back to New York. I'm done with New York City, even though I lived here all my life. And so I did. I did the Teaching Fellows program and became a teacher. And when I first became in education, after being in the legal field, I didn't want anything to do with special education. And that's the truth. I didn't want to teach special education. I fully admit, I said, I don't want to teach those kids. And that's an irony. And I say that as a person who's learned to change her view. Okay. And so I become a special educator because they need special educators. And I get thrust into teaching at middle school 217. I didn't know anything about special education. I didn't know anything about teaching, but I did know something about structure. I knew something about discipline, and I knew something about hope. What I gave my students was they could trust me. And I would tell my students, and I still tell students that I have today, whatever your potential is today, you will be beyond it by the end of the year. I did not care what grade level they came in on. I said, we're going to work with you and you're going to give me 100%. And if you're not giving me 100%, then I'm not giving you 100%. So I'm giving you 150. And I used to have my students give me critiques every week. Miss Williams, that lesson, no, you could do better. That's what I needed in the relationship with my students. Fast forward, I worked in middle school 217 for 10 years. I then worked under Chancellor Carmen Farina and got into administration as an executive director for special populations for the entire New York City, and then decided I was too far away from children. I worked in a charter school at Merrick Academy for a year, and then I moved to Francis Lewis High School, where I'm the current assistant principal. But in that time, I've always wanted to do stigma because I, myself, am a parent of 2 children with disabilities. My oldest son, Alan, who's age 12, who's on the autism spectrum and has ADHD behaviors and goes to a special school, Tiegerman. And I have my youngest son, who's 8-year-old, has a speech and language impairment, who gets counseling and PT. And so that right there made me start this.
So Danielle, when did you first find out that your oldest son had a disability? How does a parent go about kind of identifying some of these issues? Because unless sometimes you're skilled in that particular field, you know your child may go undiagnosed for years. How do you find it out?
So when I dealt with the diagnosis of Alan, my oldest, I was not skilled. No, okay. I was a parent and I was reading books. Your child should be walking at this time in 8 months. And that's what I was doing. And then he wasn't speaking. He was walking on his toes. And he started walking later, about 14 months. And then something in me just said, I need help. And I went to early intervention. I actually started working with early intervention for Alan late. He was like 2.5, which is late. Really, you should be starting at 2 or 1.5. I started late with Alan, but the work that they did for the 6 months really propels him to what I needed to do. So I just noticed he wasn't speaking well. He wasn't verbalizing. I noticed he wasn't catching the letters like you see behind me. And so we started the process, and Alan got early intervention and then right into it. I didn't get Alan diagnosed with autism officially until he was in kindergarten. He was more on the other health impairment. It was the ADHD first. But then I realized it was something else. And I said, I've got to know what this diagnosis is. And that was really hard Now, I can't tell you what my husband and I went through. It was very difficult, but I am a person that believes that knowledge is power. And I said, no. I'm going to know what's going on because I must. God has said that I'm his mother, and that's the end of that. So I'm going to be his mother, and I'm going to do what I need to do. And then when we got the diagnosis, it was, oh, okay. Now what do we do? Where do we go? What do we do? And so that's when I started researching about autism, and I was still a special ed teacher. I was not really teaching students on the autism spectrum when I was teaching. So Alan was my first, I hate to say this, test subject. He got everything. He got the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between. And we just figured it out. We just figured it out with research and reading. And I'm not afraid to speak and say, I need help. I don't understand. Please help me. I don't understand this. And I'm getting overwhelmed because as a parent, the emotion is there. Even a parent now, and I have 2 children now with IEPs, the emotion in the IEP meetings are still there, Jacques, all the time. That's why I bring somebody else with me, because I'm turning into Danielle Mommy, not
Correct.
Danielle Williams, who's an assistant principal and the CEO of Stigma. I'm Mommy, and this is my baby, and I want to do the best for my children.
I see, and that's why I think in in most professions, whether it's law or whether it's medicine, they advise, number one, you don't represent families or represent yourself in court because it's not going to work out. Well,
Yes.
before we go any further, we're going to ask all of our guests, please subscribe, hit the like button, share this episode. And if you look at our banner scrolling across the bottom, go to our Instagram page, both Brother Esquire Instagram as well as Stigma Consulting Group LLC Instagram, and become one of our followers. Just take a quick moment to do that. Well, Danielle, back to you. Now, where would a parent go for this diagnosis?
For any diagnosis, you're starting in your school system. If you believe that you need to get your child evaluated in the public school system, I'll start there. In the public school system, you need to go to your school's school psychologist, and you need to write a letter that says, I, Danielle Williams, would like my son, I'll use my second son, Aaron Williams, to be evaluated for special education services. And there is a process. That school psychologist takes that letter, has your signature, and starts the process. And it takes 60 days, full evaluations and teacher reports and interviews with parents to get a full evaluation of your child. And then after those 60 calendar days, you come and have a meeting. The meeting does not mean that you are giving your child an IEP. The meeting means you're discussing what the evaluation is and what you choose as parent for your child. One of the things that I find, Jacques, that happens a lot with parents and children with disabilities, or parents in general, the child goes to school, and then next thing you know, it's the school's issue. No, you're a parent. I am the expert of my 2 children. That's what I say. That's what my husband says consistently. I need to be a part of this, not just I want to do it, I don't want to do it. You want to be a part of this. And I want to have a conversation. You're not going to tell me about my son because you're not home with him. I am. So I need to see how this is going to transpose from one place to another. Okay. And so that's the process. That's the beginning steps. Once you get to that meeting, then you make a decision. The psychologist will tell you, based on the data, based on the evaluation, either your child needs a 504 accommodation.
What is that? Wait, 1 second, Danielle.
I'm talking about ease. I know. I started talking about litigation, going my level. Sorry.
You're going to have to slow this down for us because these acronyms that you're throwing out, you got. Please explain, because it's already a daunting task.
Yes, sir.
For let's say a parent who has no connection with, let's say, this agency, this big bureaucracy called the Department of Education, especially in New York City, where there's over 1 million students and over 1,000 schools.
Yeah.
So walk us through the process.
Okay, so you get to the meeting. I told you the first part. School psychologists, they do the evaluation. You come up, there's a meeting with the team. You're a part of that meeting. If your child is older, I recommend your child be part of that meeting. If you're doing an initial evaluation, that means the first evaluation. A re-evaluation is you're re-evaluating. You're going back and looking where the child is who already has an IEP and want to re-evaluate where they need to go. Okay. A triennial is an evaluation when the child already has an IEP and the psychologist does it every 3 years. So I've given you that. So let's go back to 504. 504 accommodations for students who don't necessarily need special education services, but need some additional assistance that academic intervention cannot provide. What do I mean by academic intervention? Extra tutoring, after school program that really is something for the student. So we get to a 504 accommodation, which means that the student may have testing accommodations. What do I mean by testing accommodations? So a general ed student goes in and there's a quiz for 30 minutes. They take the quiz for 30 minutes and that's it. A student with disabilities takes a quiz and has testing accommodation. Their test is not going to not only look different, which it could also stay the same, which is what you should, because you want our students to be in the least restrictive environment, but also that student's going to get extra time. What does extra time look like? Time and a half, 30 minutes plus another 20 minutes. Double time, 30-minute quiz is now turning into 60-minute quiz, and you're giving them that time. Students with testing accommodations can get breaks every 5, 10, 20 minutes. They can get a prompt from the teacher. They can take a water break on the IEP. They can have their directions read to them, reread to them by an educator. They can have a scribe, a person who literally writes down every word verbatim. But also what I want to say about scribes is something that I deal with all the time. People think that a scribe is what I'm saying right now. No, it doesn't look like that. What it looks like is if I say the sentence, Jacques, good morning, it's good to see you. I need to say capital J, A, C, U, E, S, comma, happy, lowercase a, like something, H, A, P. So it looks very different and that can be very time consuming. So a student who gets a 504 accommodation does not have an IEP. If at the meeting, the team decides and you parent decide, I need to make this clear, you agree to having an IEP, your child will have an individualized education program. And it's a program. I want to make that clear. Special education is not a place, ever. It is a collaboration of programs and services to give the students what they need so they can develop into an independent, wonderful citizen of the United States of America. I used to say this when I was an advisor for the Teaching Fellows program. I used to tell my new teachers, special education is not a place. You don't put children there. It is a combination of services. And I used to say this slogan all the time. You get what you need and you get out. You work towards the goal of getting out. Some students will not ever not have special education services and go into adulthood, but a lot of students will. And it's our job as educators and as parents and as team members to really work towards that goal.
I see. And that's a whole lot you just gave us, Danielle, but I want to go back a bit.
Please.
When you think about our community, the stigma that's attached sometimes prevent parents from seeking additional help. And also there's a mistrust between our community and the medical field as well, because we know that we've been the victims of overdiagnosis, we've been over medicated in certain instances. How do you get a parent to feel comfortable that their psychologist, the school psychologist, as you mentioned, is number one, has their best interests at heart and is qualified and is going to provide the proper diagnosis? And the follow-up question to that is, when we talk about, the medical field, isn't it worth getting a second opinion, especially when it comes to your babies, who now you're trusting in the hands of these professionals who you may not know?
Got it. So I'm going to do two parts. You ready? Number one, everybody has a boss. Okay, everybody has a boss. So that school psychologist has a supervisor of the school psychologist. So when you go to the meeting and say, thank you so much, can I have your supervisor psychologist email as well?
Okay.
Everybody has a boss. Don't limit. Teachers have administrators who are their bosses. Administrators who are like myself, an assistant principal. My boss is my principal, who then is my superintendent, who then is going to central. Everybody has a boss. Do not be afraid of asking the questions. When you're going to meetings and you're asking for evaluations, absolutely. And that's exactly what I did for both of my children. I did the school route, and I also went outside, and I was willing to pay for it. And the question I have for parents are, what are you willing to do? What are you willing to do? Because I was willing. My husband was taking days off. I remember, because I couldn't, and he had flexibility, and I'm grateful he did, taking days off, getting Alan and Nicholas evaluated outside of the school. So not only did I do an evaluation inside, but I also did my evaluation outside. And I used that documentation for the meeting. So sometimes when there's a meeting, they say, Ms. Williams, you have a meeting on November 16th at 9 o'clock. Well, my report hasn't come in from the outside. I need to postpone that meeting. Parents, postpone the meeting. Postpone the meeting. Don't go in there without everything you need and without a clear explanation of what you need and with your team in place. When I say the team, my team is always my husband, myself. For Alan, it's his aunt, Stacy Lyles. And for Aaron, it's usually my good friend, Christina Burgess. Always go in the meeting with me. And what do? Hey, I'll buy you lunch. I need you to write everything. They come with a pad and a paper. I need you to write and kick my leg if I'm missing something because I need that help. I'm being the emotional mom and it's okay. But we don't go into IEPs by ourselves. We do not. We don't do that anymore. We always have a team with us. We always have to listen attentively. And another thing that I want to tell parents and I have to share, the meeting doesn't have to be 40 minutes. Oh, we have to do it in this period. No, you don't. If it takes longer, then let it take longer. I remember the days of not my youngest, but Alan especially, days, hours of doing an IEP meeting to ensure he got what he needed. And that's what I need to do. So I always tell parents, what are you willing to do? My husband and I, before the FMLA said that parents with children with disabilities can take an FMLA for the IEP meeting, we just knew at the beginning of our work year, okay, I'm taking 3 days off for this IEP and 2 days off for this. That's what we were willing to do. Okay, wow. So that's where we are. That's where we are. That's what you have to be willing to do. And it's not easy. Taking off the day and losing money is not easy. I'm willing to do it.
Yeah,
I take it is what it is.
And I can see it's definitely a teamwork between you and Alan. But I also have to say your situation is pretty rare.
Yes, it is.
Where you find number one, parents who are as astute as you and Dave Allen is. I serve on the CDC with my brother, the Community Education Council, and so you all have a level of expertise that's maybe quite different from, let's say, an immigrant parent who may have a language barrier and also have some sort of barrier when it comes to dealing with authority.
Absolutely.
And may feel that, you know what, my child is in this school for 8 hours out the day away from me with these folks. I better be super nice to them. And being super nice may put your child actually at a disadvantage. What recommendations do you have for a parent who may be in that position?
Sure. So let me say this to parents. Being an advocate does not mean you are adversarial. Let me repeat that.
Good
Being
point.
An advocate does not mean you're adversarial. I don't have to come at you. No. What I need you to understand as I am an advocate is I am Alan and Aaron's mother. I am their mother, and my husband is their father. And therefore, we are looking for the best interest of the education for our children. We don't know everything. Yes, we research and we read, but I need you to understand how serious this is. When I was working at the central office and I worked with, millions of children who had IEPs, I used to say they see the ID number, they don't see the child. The difference in what I think of is when I look at an IEP, the first thing I see is the child's name. And then I ask the parent, how do you want me to address your child? I don't see the ID number first. So I've always had that different view. Second thing is you can't be afraid. And you can't be afraid to say, I don't know. Sometimes our pride gets in the way. Sometimes it does. And we say, I don't know, and I don't want to tell anybody. Listen to me. I'm an administrator at a big high school. There's some students who have been decertified by special education by my hand myself. And now they just give me, Jacques, the nod when they see me in the hallway. When they used to see me in the hallway, they'll even speak to me. They'll even speak to me. If I say good morning to them, they'll say good morning, Mr. Williams, and they kind of move. But they don't even want to talk to me anymore. They don't want to say anything to me that they had IEP. And guess what? I understand and respect it because of the stigma, and that's why I named my company Stigma. I understand it, okay? But as parents, you have to take that stigma and say, you're not a failure. Yes, absolutely, when Alan was diagnosed with autism. And then I remember when Alan was diagnosed with autism and we're doing everything for Alan, and I actually lost a son in between, Danielle N on Mother's Day, and I had another child, and I had a friend of mine say to me, Danielle, if you have one child with an IEP, you may have two. I remember considering with my husband not having another child, but there was something about Alan that I knew that he needed to be a brother, but I also knew that it would help him mature, and that caring spirit, which is my oldest son. Because even though they fight now, they don't ever want to talk to each other, right? Before, my oldest son has that caring spirit, and he takes care of his little brother as he do the same. And so what I had to learn was I had to be afraid of my own stigma. I didn't join a couple of the organizations that I'm involved now because I was embarrassed. I'm a member of Queens Chapter Jack and Jill of America Incorporated. I should have been in Jack and Jill I'm only 4 years in, and I'm being until 2030. But Alan was born in 08. I could have been in 12. And I didn't. I, myself, only me, I did it to me. I was afraid to go in because of the stature of Jack and Jill. I was afraid to go in because I thought no one would accept Alan. It was my doubt of my own children. And then I had to realize, who am I to doubt my children's greatness? I don't have that right. My job is to facilitate it. And then I changed my mind. And when I wrote the blog, it's not a death sentence. A good girlfriend of mine told me her son had autism. It's not a death sentence, Danielle. You're supposed to be this child's parent. And that was it. It flipped, and now I go forth. But as a parent, yes, you may see a stigma. You have a stigma with being an immigrant. You have a stigma if you don't have the same salary. I mean, Jacques, look at you and I. You think I don't have a stigma because I don't have hair? Yes. I deal with it now. People look at me. I mean, I'm being honest with you. We're like the twins now, right? That's different jackets. But people look at me and assume, which God bless it, it's never happened, and thank goodness, oh, she must be sick. My students at my school thought I was sick because I didn't have hair. They didn't know the reason that I don't have hair is because I lost my son and I got alopecia. That's what happened. And I don't wear a wig because I don't want to. I'm done. I'm good. Everybody's happy and we're happy too. But I walk around like a walking stigma. I have to explain myself why I don't wear a wig or any other hair apparatus. Those things happen, but at some point, you've got to make a decision. I'm just going to talk you through it. This is who I am. This is who my child is. You've got to sit down, mom and dad, or mom, or just dad, or whomever is taking care of their child. I have no idea what this IEP is saying. I need you to write this IEP so I can understand. Because we do that. Don't get me wrong. We write those E's and you say, slow down, Danielle. Oh, yeah, we get the FBA and the BIP and the IEP and the counseling and the PT and the OT and this, and we go crazy. And then you're looking at me with these eyes of, what are you talking about? Right? We, as responsible educators, must give IEPs that parents understand, and we must be willing to have parents come to us with questions. That's why one of the things I do at my school all the time in the beginning of the year, I do know your child's IEP. Bring a copy. And my parents just sit down with an IEP. And I usually have translators. I usually have school psychologists, other teachers, other administrators, and I put them in groups. I usually put them in 9th, 10th, 11th grade. Sometimes I put them in by languages, and I say, read page 1. What is it telling you about your child? My son is coming down now. One.
That's okay. That's okay. Let him join us.
This
Let him
is
join
Nicholas.
us.
You want to say hello?
Yeah. Hey, Nick.
Hello.
How's it going,
That's
buddy?
one.
All right. All right,
That's
Nick.
one. That's the 8-year-old. And the other one will come to 2. But that's what I do. You got to know your IEPs. Alan, you want to say hello?
Hello.
That's
Hey,
Alan. That's
Alan.
the oldest one. How are you?
All right. I see
boy.
that bike. I see that Vikings jersey you got on,
Oh,
Alan.
yes. They're Viking fans, and we live in New York. We apologize.
How did that happen? How did that happen?
Vikings. All right, boys, give me a second. So, long of the short, what happens is it's really important. It's really important to be humble. You have to do it. You have to let it go and say, I don't know what you're talking about. What do you mean he's stimming? What are you talking about? What I mean, Mom, is that when your child gets nervous, they're rocking back and forth. See you later, Al. They're rocking back and forth. They're moving back and forth. They may be sucking their fingers. They may be using something sensory like a pen to bite. They're stimming. Wow. I have to be able to explain that to you. That is the responsibility of educators. And that's what you demand. But you don't have to be mean about it. Just send an email. One of the things I do, Jacques, is I organize my life by calendar, but I organize the IEP issues that I have by day. So Alan is Tuesday and Nicholas is Thursday. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I know part of that day, I'm either going to write an email or I'm going to look at something and say, is anything going on? Do I need to check in or anything? When I gave that structure to myself, it helped me to manage having 2 boys with IEPs in different grades. I have 2 boys, 2 different diagnoses. One has ADHD, autism. He's at a specialized school. He takes the bus to school an hour and a half away, right? And he gets PT and life skills in this. Then I've got the 8-year-old who's in the ICT with counseling and speech. I'm managing 2 different schools, 2 different types of services, 2 different types of people. And I've got to do it. This is the life that God chose. Well, that's it. That's the end of it. And so as a parent, yes, it's fearful. Sometimes the language is not there. And one of the things I do notice with some of my parents, and I'll say this, Jacques, is they won't bring a translator. Please don't do that anymore. I implore you. Please don't do that anymore. If I have a meeting with you and I did not bring a translator, cancel the meeting. Yes. Am I going to be frustrated as administrator? Yes, I will. I fully admit. I'm going to be like, oh my gosh, I got to go back. Yes. Please cancel the meeting. If you need an interpreter or you need someone to help you understand the language, then bring whoever you need. But for parents who just don't understand the process, bring an advocate. You can bring an advocate to your meeting that's either by the DOE, by myself, or just another person. You don't have to necessarily have a person who's an expert to be at the IEP meeting. You just want somebody there who's able to take great notes and will really give you some good information so that you can think and process about the decision you're going to make. What I find interesting that in New York and Long Island, because I do both, is a lot of parents in New York let the system tell them what to do with their children. But on Long Island, they don't do that. They advocate and push and this and that and the other. And I want us to start learning how that we are in control of our children, even during this time of COVID, which we definitely need to talk about. Because guess what, ladies and gentlemen? The governor is starting to be on the television. This is what this means. Schools are going to shut down schools. And I need you to start preparing now. Once you see the governor, remember when it started happening in March? And we started seeing Governor Cuomo? He was slowly inching for us to shut down. It's going to happen again. How are you preparing?
A couple of quick questions for you.
Please.
And you talked about the schools out in Long Island, and there is a disparity between the services that are being offered in Long Island as well as the ones in New York City. And from a personal standpoint, I had a colleague whose child was receiving services out in Long Island, and the services that child received, I don't think was made readily accessible to some of the students in New York City who may have needed those services.
And I have the same thing. One of my sons goes to Long Island and one is in New York City. Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I deal with them both. Right.
And I must tell you now, my colleague's son is a proud graduate of a major university, doing exceptionally well. And I don't believe the stigma was the same out in Long Island as it is sometimes in our community.
Yes.
So now, as an administrator, how do you engage your parent body to actively find out how the best way to help their child?
So for me, because I'm a product of New York City public schools, very proud product of public schools. My old guidance counselor used to say to me, Danielle, you always have to supplement. So that's what I do. I supplement and I advocate for my children, and I really think about it. Um, no school system is the best. There's no perfect school system. New York City is one of the largest. Long Island is a large school system as well. But at the end of the day, it's about what you need for your individual child. My son who goes to public school in District 26 is having a great education. Am I upset that it's shutting? My son's school just shut down until November 30th, but it is what it is. We have to be safe. And so what I've learned is that you've got to look at all avenues. You cannot, it's exhausting. It's exhausting doing this. I have to wake up early in the morning, and I do it methodically so I can function during the day. But I'm telling you, it's exhausting. And what you have to do is pay attention and ask questions and keep asking questions until you receive answers. It's incredible. It's incredible. I don't live in Long Island. I live in Queens. I live in Laurelton. That's where I live. And I went to PS 156. I went to 231, and I went to Townsend Harris High School. And then I went to Hampton University. And so it is, I got a great education while I was here, and I continue to believe in the school system. That's why I work in it. But also I've worked in a charter school. I've seen the differences there, and in a private school. So there are differences everywhere. This is about students with disabilities to ensure that they receive the mandated services that schools are going to provide. But let me make it very clear. Part of my background is that I work with the state, and I am a parent representative for the New York State. I am part of the parent representatives New York State Commissioners Advisory Panel. Okay. And with that, I advocate with the state. The state looks different than what New York City looks for a job. Okay. And also, what you need to understand is that there's state compliance regulations that New York City has to follow. One of the things that I've learned with working with the state as well is we're all trying to get through. New York City is one large system, but there are other systems in New York State. And New York City is regulated by New York State very clearly. And so you have Buffalo and the Big Five, New York City, Buffalo, Rochester. And so we're all having these same issues. But one of the things that's one of our major issues in the state is teacher shortage. I, as an administrator, luckily have not lost many teachers at my school. That's luckily. And I say that because I value my educators, period. What they need, I'm there. I give them workshops. I give parent workshops, student workshops. I do teacher workshops. I ask them, I involve them in the process. Create a curriculum. I always tell my teachers all the time, I have a great idea. Great, put in a proposal. I don't know if I can do it this year, but I may be able to do it next year. Let's start working on it. I'm going to work with you. I'm going to collaborate you. Yes, I'm your supervisor. And yes, I observe you. But I'm going to work with you. I go into my teacher's classroom now virtually, and look at what they're doing virtually. And I give them a little email. Hey, great job. Or, hey, why don't you try to do this differently? As we're learning this new school normal, that's not going away, right?
Correct.
So we have a lot of schools, just like Annette is saying on the feed, that are out of compliance, that have to provide services. This is the problem. We're the providers. So you can't create people to come work for the DOE. You can't create the bodies. This is an issue that is a statewide issue. Teacher shortage, occupational therapy shortage. It is serious. I know that I'm lucky at the school that I work for that I have so many related services, but it can be so difficult for parents in other schools who don't have the resources. And I'm going to say this as an administrator, it is not our fault. We are trying to bring people into our schools to work with students. We
Danielle,
really, really are.
we have a question
Sure,
from
go on.
Facebook. Fifi DST, I think one of your Delta
Yes,
sisters may
of
be
course.
asking this
Felicia,
question.
yes.
Hey, how long should you wait until you receive the initial IEP after your first meeting with the teachers and special ed providers to discuss services and classification?
Okay, so I'm going to clarify Felicia's Fee's question. How long should you wait until you receive? So once you have had your meeting, so let me go back, make it clear. You go and you say, I want an evaluation. You have to wait 60 calendar days for that evaluation to be complete. Then you have your initial meeting of discussing services. So it's first 60 calendar days, right? Then you have your initial meeting. After you have that initial meeting and you've decided, let's say I decided, I'm going to have an IEP. That IEP should be to you in 10 days, 10 calendar days. And you should be able to review it. You should be able to look at it. You should be able to see the questions. And honestly, parents, don't sign it initially. Read it. Have a group to come read it. I know we're in COVID. Have one person you trust. Hey, can you read this, please? Can you read this, please? So I understand, what am I communicating to you? Are you reading this or I'm reading this? Are we reading the same thing? Because you've got to have an understanding. Because one of the things that I do, Jacques, is this. When I was having IEP meetings initially with Alan and then with Aaron, I would say, I remember saying this to both of their kindergarten teachers. You know, my sons are going to a 4-year institution that's accredited, right? And that's exactly what I said. And I
Straight
said,
up.
how are we getting him there with this document? Let's begin. And they looked at me. He's in kindergarten. No. He's a future college graduate. Yes, I know. But I need you to make sure this IEP is going to get him there because that's a requirement for my family. You're going to 4-year college. That's it. Okay, I'm trying to get one of my sons to go to Hampton because I went to Hampton. So, you know, my mother would say when those kids go to Howard because they went to Howard. But, you know,
and the other one going to Morehouse. I got to put in the plug.
Somebody's got to go. But regardless of anything, that's the intensity that I was. And so during this time of COVID, am I going to ask parents to give our administrators a minute? Yes. We're overwhelmed. We're trying to follow the state directives. We're trying to follow the city directives, of course. But you still have rights. And I am the person who has to be who do those rights. And the child has that right. And while they're in this public school system, they have those rights to those mandated services. Therefore, go to your administrator and say, hey, I was supposed to get an IEP on this date. Give a day cushion. I haven't received it yet. Can you tell me the status? It's just an email. It's just a sentence. Everybody's always on their phones, right? Looking at their phones. Do the intensity that you're looking at the Facebook feed and this on your phone for your child. Do the same thing. Look at the phone, find the phone, do it because they need you to do that. And you need to talk about what if they're satisfied. My husband and I just had a conversation today about the who, what, where, when, and why, how of special education. We were getting into this conversation. And I said, yeah, I'm going to share that today because it's important. And may I share that with him right now, Jacques?
You know what?
I'll wait.
I have about 15 questions that I know we're not going to get through. I'm loving this conversation, but I want to talk about the cultural sensitivities again, right? Yeah. Because again, I know, and I just would reference, my upbringing. I know, growing up in New York City, attending public school, Springfield Gardens High School, but prior to that, attending Catholic school, St. Pius X. And it was a pretty rough transition, right? But one of the things that I found was that some of the brighter students were actually in special education. I'm serious, and I don't want to name any names
because the creativity.
Absolutely.
I'm left-handed. There was a time in the world, Jacques, that children who were left-handed were in special education. Your brain works differently. You know, I myself am a product of special education services. I had speech therapy. I had a lisp. I still work
Yeah.
on it as an adult, and I still,
Uh,
work on it and things. But no one knows that now. You know what I
so
mean? No one knows that now.
so
I had to
how
deal with that myself.
so how can we best serve these brilliant, bright students? And as I mentioned to you, I had one brother on my football team. We all knew he was the smartest dude on the football team. However, he didn't matriculate through high school as successfully as we some of the other brothers on the team,
Yeah,
and
right.
part of that we believed the teachers weren't really equipped to handle his intelligence or his brilliance, and I think we have a lot of students that's right now they're just not interested in school, and
You're right.
it's not because of them. It's
No,
because of what they're receiving in the school system.
and
How can we prevent that?
it's really COVID has really impacted and exposed a lot of things with our children. Let's say that
Mm.
honestly. There's some children that love to be behind a screen all day long. There's some children that can't do it. So one of the things I would tell parents is you got to know your kid. So I have two children. Alan, who's a coder, please, he'll be behind the screen every day. He would have probably been at your house, Jock, doing the podcast with you. You kidding me? He's all over. He's doing the tech thing. And I don't know anything. I am the mother who has to have him educate me on the technology. And I'm willing to, I don't understand, Alan, tell me. And then I have Aaron Nicholas, who is a sports kid. He's coming to the Rosedale Jets when you come back. He's coming because
Yeah,
that's it. But he does
looking
it.
forward to it.
He does it, but he doesn't want to do it. Anytime Aaron Nicholas says, what do you want to do? I want to go outside. I'm kicking the soccer ball. I'm throwing the football. Okay, so part of my structure, and Aaron is blended, so he goes 2 days a week to school, is he has to take movement breaks, movement breaks, 10 minutes, must take movement breaks, must go outside every day. My son was born in February. He could care less about the cold. He get a cold, let's go. He's out. And so but the hardest part is about how do we as educators, parents, and as administrators, I'll give you all three perspectives, work with children with our disabilities. One, as parents, learn your child. Learn how they're growing. Give them a basic vocational assessment, which you can find online. Go to Google and go vocational assessment for children. That's all you got to put. Ask them what they like, what they want to do, how they want to feel, because it's so important. Talk about your emotional intelligence. Thank you, Annette. Exactly. Multiple intelligences. Find and tap into the type of person they are. Recently, I did the keys to personal success. And I did the type of person I am. Am I orange or blue or green? Give them a personality test. Give them one of those tests that are really easy. It's interesting and it's a great conversation. But what I learned about my oldest son is that he's a coder. He'll sit in front of that screen for 10 hours and not move. I'm like, no, Alan, you got to eat, man. You got to eat. You got to use the bathroom.
So
But
he's
Nicholas, he will do what I tell him. Okay, my class is 25 minutes and it's done. What are we doing? I'm running up and down the steps. I'm doing this. And so now that I know who my children are, that's how I help them in blended learning. So getting back to what you can do for that intelligence, foster it, look at it, observe. Your children are always telling you something.
wow.
And sometimes parents, we're just too busy to look. And
Mm.
what I've learned from my 8-year-old, which gets me emotional, and I was having this conversation with a friend, that I realized that I wasn't as close to him as I thought.
I see.
And this time of COVID, even though it's difficult, has been nothing but a blessing to me. Because I really know Aaron Nicholas. He's like my buddy. He's my singing buddy, my dancing, but I really know him. I know that he looks at my facial expressions, and if I'm serious, he's thinking something's wrong, and I'm realizing, no, I may just be working, and we're working on that together. Okay, so know your children. Take a minute today, and what I do every week is on Sunday, like today. I sit down with them for 5 minutes. Hey, what's going on? Anything good? What's happening? And then Alan will talk to me something about coding that I know I know what he's talking about. And he'll show me. I'm like, great. And then Nicholas, well, mommy, and he always starts with, mommy, I love you. But, one day this week, and I realized it's so important. Me saying I love you to Aaron I have to say it 20 times a day. Alan, he's a 12-year-old and a preteen. He could care less. Good to see you. Give me a kiss on the head and keep moving. You know, that's what I get. I get the kiss on the head, and I'm like, okay, you're out. But it's okay. But Alan, when Alan needs me to pay attention to him, he says, I want you to look in my eye, mommy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Mommy, you're cooking. Can you stop and look in my eye? Yes, I can. And I stop and I realize that importance. And I didn't get that when we didn't have COVID. So I'm trying to make the best of it as we're here.
Danielle, we have 10 minutes left, and I swear,
okay,
we can.
What question? Give me the good one.
No, we can talk for hours on this.
I know.
I mean, especially when it comes to our young people, because we know that essentially they're going to be the rulers of this whole thing.
We are raising our leaders. We are raising our leaders.
Absolutely, but I do want to reserve 5 minutes towards the end for you, although you're very modest about it, for you to talk about stigma and exactly how they can access stigma and everything dealing with your business model, because I think that's super duper important. I have a comment from my brother, Judas Kiss. There are a few more steps after that first IEP meeting. The IEP still needs to be completed, and after the IEP is fully implemented, and you see what the service, you see what services the school will provide, then you look into the services outside of the school.
Because sometimes you have to get a PSA, and sometimes if the school cannot provide it, you have to go outside. And he's absolutely right. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But you got to start with the communication. You got to start with the talk. You got to start with breaking your own stigma. Parents, break it. Say, I need to do what I need to do for this child, because one of the things I tell my sons all the time is, mommy will not be here for the rest of your life. I am raising men who must be independent. And it doesn't matter that they have an IEP. You saw both of my boys.
That's right.
You seen them, Jock. Yep. You know, no one walks around and goes, oh, they have IEPs? No. They're like two cute little boys getting this, that, and the other. But right. I know what's going on in that brain, and I have to figure it out every time. Every single time. And I have to help them to self-advocate for themselves. You
Correct.
know? Absolutely.
Correct. Annette Long Manigault. Hey, Annette.
I know Annette. Hi, Annette.
African American males are placed in systems that set them up for failure. Can you speak to that?
I can speak to that. I know when Alan was getting an IEP, they thought he would go into D75. He did not need to go into D75. He needed something different. I'll say that. And my son and I made sure. My husband and I, and my son made sure, no, this wasn't going to happen. That wasn't a place for him. And there is a place for children in D75. Absolutely. But what I say every time, and what Annette just said, special education is not a place. It is putting the dots together of services and related services to make a program for a child so that they can be successful. One of the things I want to tell parents is always, and I want to say this because I have to say it, it's so important, the who, the what, the where, the when, the why. Who's in charge of your child's IEP? Do you know the case manager? You should. What are the services? Services meaning related services, counseling, occupational therapy, physical therapy, hearing therapy, vision therapy, also services, programs, ICT, 12 to 1 to 1, 12 to 1, 15 to 1, and sets. Where? Parents, how many of you right now can tell me where your child's IEP is? I can lean right here and get it. Boom. Right here. I got a red folder for Alan, a blue folder for Nicholas. Where's your child IEP? It should not be in a closet where you don't know how to access it. It should be given to your families and friends. Break the stigma. My children's IEPs go to every year my mother, Judicus, which is their uncle, to be honest with you, people in Jack and Jill, and at UW, people in Delta, anybody and everybody who works with my child gets a copy of my son's IEP. I am not afraid. The when is the annual review? That should be put on your calendar in a star. And just to let you know, it's a living document. You don't have to just do the IEP once a year. Reconvene it if you need to. It's a living document, just like your child is living and moving. The why. What services has your child had for 2 or more years? And why do they still have it? Do they need to grow out of it, or what are we doing to improve, to reduce, so we can get them to the least restrictive environment? How?
Okay.
And I'm gonna do the last thing. How? How are the services being given to your child? Assan, IEP, individualized education program. Individualized education program. That's what I want to say for an IEP. Thank you for the question. And that's it. How? How are the services being given? Even digitally. Are they on classes? Are they going to be on classes? What type of platform? Parents, do you know the platforms your children are using? Zoom, Google Meets, Microsoft Teams. There's a lot of different platforms that can be used. Do you know them? And if not, you're going to come over to Stigma, because we're going to talk about it. We're going to do tutorials. We've got to be abreast on what we need to do. Okay?
Excellent. And the last question.
Yes.
We know right now regular services are challenging, are very challenging. Period. Just having, period. Like regular school right now is super challenging for the students and for the teachers at this time. This whole remote, this blended learning, etc. Right? Because I know for me, my son, he's doing the full remote. Although he was presented with an opportunity to do the blended, but we decided to do full remote. I chose, and I'm glad I chose to do that, because I received an email about a week ago, and 4 of the students at his school had tested positive for COVID. They shut the school down for 2 days, and big mess. But I know, as a parent, I've become the new dean of students right now. with one student. What student?
The dean, the guidance counselor, the school worker. I make a meal. I welcome you in the morning.
I'm the cafeteria worker.
That's right. I'm doing everything.
The only thing I'm not doing is the school crossing guard. I'm not there yet. We're not going outside. But what I've noticed was, it got to a point. He was like, "Dad, I'm tired of sitting in this office," because I have an office and his office is right next to mine, and it's separated by this divider that I have. And he said, "You know what? Can I just go upstairs in my room?" And I said, No. We're not going to do your room, but we'll do the living room for now. And we did the living room, and changing the scenery worked wonders, because he kind of refocused and got back into it. And I figured it out. He just was tired of being in the same room, looking at the same screen for hours on end.
So let me give you some tips that's going to
Yes, that's what I was going to ask you.
Ready? Here's tip number 1. Pack your child's school, elementary and middle school. Pack your child's school bag like they're going to school. Pack their lunches. Saved my life. I pack Alan and Aaron's. Now, Alan does go to school, and Aaron is here at home, blended. I pack his lunches if he's going to the school building every day. So when I get up and do their breakfast, and I open Alan goes to school, and I open Nick, I call him Nikki's bag. That's the food that you have between 8 and 3. Number 1. Number 2. I'm going to say this very nicely. What are you willing to do, parents? So this is what I'm willing to do. At 7 o'clock today, my children will come down here yelling and screaming, and I'm the worst mother in the world, and they will bring all their electronics downstairs on that dining room table, and they will pack every last one of them up, and then they will take them to the trunk of my car and put them in it. They don't get electronics during the week. You're in school. School's from 8 to 3. That's what we're doing. I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's going on in the internet. People are usually texting me.
Danielle, I gotta tell you, that's some that's some real old school teaching right there. I got growing up, we didn't watch TV during the school week.
What are you watching TV? But you're not watching TV in school. You're not watching TV now. You don't watch. You don't turn it on. And so one of my sons, of course, the smart one, Alan, the one that's the coding guy. I'm gonna turn on the TV. You're part of this new age. You don't even know how to turn on the TV with a knob. I'm part of that school. Where I turn on the television with a knob. You only think you got a remote. So guess what? I'll hide the remotes. It is what it is. Correct. But every Sunday, my sons put their electronics in their car, and they hate it. But I make them do it because you're now in school. You earn those electronics back on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. That's a tip. Tip number 3, make a space for your child. As you see behind me, this is Aaron and Alan's space. Aaron's learning script right now and doing prepositions. Make a space for them. Aaron's space is actually upstairs in the dining room table, but he has a particular chair. But I do it at the dining room table so he can shift, from different chairs, but he knows that's his area. And I set it up every day. 4, make a schedule for your child. So if this was the schedule, this would look like a whiteboard, and it would say Aaron Nicholas Williams, and it would say ELA, math, social studies, science, time, and then I give them additional work. What is it? I give them, Aaron's learning both Spanish and Japanese, so he does Duolingo, and he does Prodigy Math, and he does Splash Math, and all those things, and that's what you have to do. The prep before parents is essential so that, 1, your children can get out of your hair and you can do your job, because I understand that as well. And 2, allowing them to have the breaks they need so that they can be successful.
Nice. Well, thank you for that. But as I promised, I want you to talk. I want you to talk about Stigma Consulting LLC and speak to us as if we're parents who have a child that we identified or may have a hunch that this child may be on the spectrum or need additional services, but we don't know where to go, and we need someone to help us with the guidance. We need services from Stigma Consulting.
Sure.
What do we do? How do we get to you, and how does it work?
So I'm going to reintroduce myself. My name is Danielle N. Williams. I'm the CEO and founder of Stigma Consulting Group. I started Stigma because I am a parent of 2 children with disabilities, my oldest on the autism spectrum and my youngest who has a speech and language impairment. I believe that our children are great, and I know they are, and it's our responsibility and my responsibility to help you through that process. 1, parents, you're not alone. You can do this. So dry your tears after you've cried. You've got the diagnosis. It's okay, whatever it is, and come to me and say, I don't understand this IEP. What we provide is we provide parent workshops. And we do go online every month and every other month and do parent workshops to help you read the IEP. I do consultations with people all the time to just understand what the IEP is saying, so that you can have better conversations with your teachers. I provide resources. One of the resources we're providing right now is just to be able to understand the digital and virtual platforms that our children are learning. And they'll be on our website. I'm actually launching my website, stigmaconsultinggroup.com, on November 23rd. So right now, you can contact me. Thank you. Contact me on Instagram. Like me on Instagram. I give tips every week, and we're in this together. It is not a death sentence. You can get through this. Just remember, it takes time. You'll never be an expert if you don't start somewhere. But always remember, your children have the power to do anything they want to do. And don't let anybody tell you that, because they have the IEP. They have the potential to grow, and they have infinite possibilities for their life. And that's what Stigma is about.
Whoa, Danielle, I want to thank you so much. And I really can't thank you enough for educating us today on this subject, which is dear and near to all of us in the community who care about our children. And we want to thank you for your transparency and straightforwardness, because I think you gave us as parents, marching orders: get involved. And even if your child is not on the spectrum, your child doesn't have a disability, get involved.
And I know there are a lot of other questions. And Jacques, if you want to forward those questions to me, or if you all want to email me at stigmaconsultinggroup.llc@gmail.com, I'm happy to answer any of your questions. I know there are a lot of people think that you always have to fight. You don't have to fight. You do have to be proactive. You do got to work through it, but don't necessarily think it's a fight. It's just what you're willing to do for your child. And I'm here to help you with that. I really am. I want you to be successful, and I want your children to be successful. And we do not only parent workshops, but student workshops, and it really helps us out as a community. We are a community together working through this, and we can get through it one day at a time.
Well, Danielle, again, I can't thank you enough. Thank you so very much. And we want to thank you out there, the listening audience, the viewing audience.
Thank you for coming.
for joining us. And I see Vanessa Lindley, one of my
Hey,
favorites.
Vanessa.
Hey, Vanessa, please send regards to your husband as well.
Yes.
We just want to thank you for joining us this afternoon with such a timely message that we received from Danielle N. Williams from Stigma Consulting Group, LLC. We're going to let the number play through the bottom banner a bit. If you have any questions, her telephone number is there. Follow her on Instagram at Stigma Consulting Group, LLC, and get the help that you need. Get the help that you need. And again, as just a personal experience, I know in law school, we had students who received certain accommodations all the time. So do not allow.
You and I both went to law school, and no, I got an accommodation because I was left-handed. I absolutely did.
Wow.
I absolutely did. You get accommodations for a lot. You just got to open your mouth and say something.
Correct. And you have some dynamite attorneys out there who receive some services when they were in grade school or high school, and they're thriving adults now in various professions. So don't let a stigma of what is perceived to be a stigma stop you from getting the services your child needs right now. Again, thank you very much, and may God bless all of you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Good night.